The air inside the auction hall was heavy, almost like breathing smoke. Dozens of alien races filled the seats, their eyes locked on the single cage in the middle of the platform. Inside the cage stood a girl, tall, thin but powerful, with wild silver hair and glowing golden eyes that never blinked. She was barefoot, her skin marked with strange patterns like lightning scars, and heavy chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles. Even in silence, she radiated danger. The auctioneer, a tall insectoid creature with glistening black eyes, tapped the microphone nervously. "Lot number 77, he announced, his voice trembling. "The wild alien girl, captured alive from the death moons of Dravik." His mandibles clicked nervously before adding, "Starting bid." He stopped, scanning the room. No one moved, no one spoke. The stories about her were too fresh. She had been caught only after destroying an entire hunting squad, killing 12 warriors with nothing but her bare hands and a broken chain. Some said she could tear through metal like paper. Others whispered she could speak to beasts and make them attack on her command. Every rumor made the crowd more afraid to move. The auctioneer cleared his throat and tried again. "Starting bid, 10,000 credits." Still the room stayed silent. The alien merchants looked away, pretending to check their data pads. The warlords kept their arms folded, refusing to meet her burning gaze. In the cage, the girl shifted slightly, her chains clinking. Her eyes swept across the crowd like a predator scanning prey. She tilted her head, almost amused at their fear. Then, something strange happened. Her eyes locked onto a man at the back of the hall. He was human, tall, wearing a dark jacket with no visible weapons, his hands resting calmly at his sides. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they were steady. When the auctioneer's voice called, "For bids again," the man raised his hand. Every head in the hall turned toward him. The silence grew heavier. Even the girl in the cage looked confused for a moment. "Sir," the auctioneer stammered, "perhaps you are unaware of what she is." The man didn't answer. His hand stayed raised, unmoving. The alien beside him leaned over and whispered in a hiss, "Put your hand down, human. That thing will kill you before you leave this room." The human didn't move. Instead, he met the girl's eyes and held her gaze. She tilted her head again, studying him as if trying to see inside his mind. 10,000 credits, the auctioneer said quickly. "Do I hear any other bids?" Silence. Going once? Going twice. The insectoid paused, looking at the human one last time. "Final warning. Once claimed, she will be yours. Forever. If you survive." The human's hand stayed in the air. It did not lower. The hammer fell. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, his voice cracking, "to the human in the back." The crowd began to murmur in disbelief. Some shook their heads, others whispered bets on how long the man would live. Two alien guards approached the cage with a key. "Remove the chains," the human said calmly. The guards froze. "Sir, that is not wise." "I paid for her," the human replied, his voice firm. "Remove them." The auctioneer gave a nervous signal, and the guards stepped closer to the cage. The girl stood perfectly still, her golden eyes never leaving the human's face. One lock clicked open, then another. The chains fell to the floor with a heavy thud. The guards started to back away. In a sudden blur of motion, the girl moved. The crowd gasped. She lunged forward, not toward the human, but at the nearest guard, slamming him into the wall with bone-cracking force. The second guard swung his weapon, but she caught his arm and twisted it until the weapon fell. With a quick shove, "Shh!" he sent him sprawling to the ground, and then, to everyone's shock, she turned and walked to the human's side. Her steps were slow, deliberate. She stood beside him like a shadow, her eyes still burning. The crowd whispered louder now. No one had ever seen her protect someone before. The human looked at her, his expression unreadable. The girl's lips moved slightly, and in a low voice, she spoke for the first time. "You," she said, her voice like a growl, "are mine now." The auctioneer's mandibles clicked in confusion. The human didn't answer. He simply turned and began walking toward the exit. The wild alien girl followed, her chains lying forgotten on the floor. All eyes in the hall followed them, some with curiosity, some with fear. But one thing was certain, the galaxy had just witnessed something dangerous begin. The corridor outside the auction hall was lined with shadowed figures, merchants, mercenaries, and thieves. all watching as the human walked past with the wild alien girl at his side. Whispers followed them like smoke. Some voices spoke in disbelief, others in quiet excitement. More than one pair of alien eyes tracked them with greed. The human's pace was calm, unhurried. It was as if he was walking through an empty street rather than a hall full of predators. The girl walked close, her gaze sweeping across the crowd like a blade. Each time someone stared too long, her golden eyes met theirs and they quickly looked away. Halfway down the hall, an armored reptilian stepped into their path. His scales were marked with scars and his voice was a deep growl. "Human," he said, "sell her to me. Double what you paid." The human didn't slow, didn't speak. He simply looked at the reptilian for one silent moment. Something in his expression made the alien step back. They reached the docking bay. Rows of ships rested behind shimmering security fields. The human led her toward a small freighter, old with patched hull plates but well kept. The girl's head tilted slightly as if she was surprised by his siu. Hoist a vessel before they could board. 3 alien guards approached, weapons drawn. One of them held a datapad. "There's a problem," the guard said. "Auction protocol requires property to be fitted with a control collar before release." The human's eyes narrowed. "She's not property," he said, his voice calm but heavy. The guards hesitated, unsure if he was bluffing or dangerous. The girl moved before they could react. In one smooth motion, she stepped in front of the human, snatched the datapad, and crushed it in her hand. Bits of metal and glass fell to the floor like sand. Her golden eyes locked onto the guards, and for a long moment, none of them dared to move. The guards stepped aside without another word. They boarded the freighter, the ramp closing behind them with a hiss. Inside, the ship smelled faintly of metal and old leather. The girl walked the narrow corridors, running her fingers along the walls. It was as if she was testing the ship, listening to its hum. When she reached the cockpit, she stopped. "This is yours," she said quietly. The human nodded once, taking the pilot's seat. For a moment there was silence except for the hum of systems powering up. Then the girl turned, her eyes still fixed on him. "Why did you raise your hand?" she asked, her tone sharp, almost demanding. The human didn't answer immediately. Instead, he adjusted the controls and lifted the ship off the platform. The city below shrank into darkness as they rose toward the stars. In the distance, through the cockpit glass, a faint glow appeared. It grew brighter, sharper, until it formed into the shape of a warship. A message flashed across the human's console. Unknown transmission, encrypted. He glanced at it briefly before shutting it off. "They'll come for you," he said at last. "I figured you'd rather leave with someone who won't sell you." The girl stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, almost too quiet to hear, she said, "We'll see." Her gaze shifted to the stars ahead, but deep in her golden eyes, there was something new. Not trust, not yet, but the first flicker of curiosity. Outside, in the void of space, the warship turned slowly to follow. The game had only just begun. The freighter drifted through the dark. Stars shimmered outside, silent and cold. Inside, the human adjusted the ship's heading, his movements steady and precise. The girl sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes scanning every control, every light. She was still, but her presence felt like a coiled spring ready to snap. The silence was broken by a sharp alarm. A blinking red symbol appeared on the console. Tracking lock. The human's jaw tightened. "They found us faster than I thought," he muttered. The girl leaned closer to the display, reading the alien symbols as if she had seen them before. A shadow passed across the stars. A smaller ship, sleek and armed, emerged from the darkness. Its weapons charged with a faint blue glow. The comm crackled, and a cold voice spoke. "Human vessel, release the girl, and we may let you live." The human didn't answer. He flipped a switch, and the freighter's shields powered up with a low hum. The girl's golden eyes burned brighter. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "They'll keep coming." Her voice carried no fear, only certainty. The enemy ship fired. Blue light flashed past the cockpit, shaking the freighter. The human's hands moved over the controls, keeping the ship steady. "Strap in," he said, his voice calm. The girl didn't move toward the harness. Instead, she stood and walked toward the weapons station. The human glanced back. "You know how to use that?" The girl's answer was a cold smile. Her hands danced over the controls, and the freighter's hidden turrets slid into position. The next blast from the enemy ship was met with a sudden burst of red fire. The girl's aim was perfect. One hit tore through their shields. The comm crackled again, this time with anger. "You've made a mistake," the voice hissed. The girl didn't reply. She fired again, and the enemy ship spun away, its engines smoking. The human steered past the wreck, not slowing. She returned to the co-pilot seat without a word. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, the human broke the silence. "You've done this before," he said, not as a question but as a statement. The girl's gaze stayed on the stars ahead. "I've done worse," she said softly. Somewhere deep in the black, a second signal appeared on the scanner, bigger this time, and this one was waiting for them. The freighter slowed, drifting at the edge of a shattered asteroid belt. Broken rocks spun in silence, their surfaces scorched by old battles. The scanner showed the larger ship still ahead, waiting like a predator in the dark. The human kept his hand steady on the controls, his eyes scanning for an escape route. The girl stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the ship ahead. Her breathing was slow, but her eyes, they were not calm. They glowed brighter now, like molten gold in the dark. "That ship," she said quietly. "I know it." The human glanced at her. Friend or enemy? Her answer was a cold, flat whisper. "The one who put me in chains." Before he could ask more, a voice filled the cockpit. It was deep, arrogant, dripping with satisfaction. "Well, well, I was told you had been sold, little beast," the voice said, "but I see you found a new keeper." The girl's jaw tightened, her hands curling into fists. "You're not taking me back," she growled. The voice laughed. "You think you have a choice?" The larger ship began to move, its heavy cannon swiveling into position. The human's mind raced. His freighter couldn't match that firepower head-on, but the girl stepped forward, placing her hand on the control panel. "There's a way," she said, her voice calm now, "but you have to trust me." He looked at her hull, and, small, scarred but steady, "What's the way?" She didn't explain. Instead, she tapped into the ship's comms and sent out a strange pulse. It was not a normal signal. It sounded more like a deep, rumbling growl mixed with static. The human felt it in his bones like something ancient had just answered. Moments later, movement flickered in the asteroid's shadows. Dark shapes detached themselves from the rocks, creatures, massive and insect-like, their shells glinting with alien light. They swam through space with slow, deliberate movements, each one bigger than his freighter. The larger ship stopped moving as if it suddenly understood the danger. The girl's eyes were brighter now, almost burning. "They're coming for him," she said, her voice low. The human stared at her. "You called them?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The creatures surrounded the enemy ship, their claws scraping against the hull with a sound that cut through the silence of space. The human watched as the ship's shields flared under the assault. "This is your chance," she said, turning to him. "Run." He hesitated, glancing at her, but the look in her eyes told him this wasn't just survival, it was revenge. He pushed the controls forward, and the freighter shot past the chaos, leaving the enemy trapped among the living shadows. When the stars opened ahead of them, the girl finally sat back, her voice quieter now. "They'll follow us still," she said, "but now they know I'm not the one in chains." The freighter raced through open space, its engines burning bright against the endless black. Behind them, the asteroid belt faded from view, but the memory of the swarm lingered. The human checked the long-range scanner. Nothing yet, but he knew that silence in space never lasted. They would come. They always did. The girl sat on the floor of the cockpit, cross-legged, repairing a broken weapon she had taken from one of the auction guards. Her hands were quick and sure, each movement precise. The human watched her for a moment, then asked, "Yeah, you fought a lot, haven't you?" She didn't look up. "I was born fighting," she said. "It's the only reason I'm still alive." They stopped at a hidden refueling station built inside the shell of an old mining rig. Its walls were dark with age, the corridors echoing with the sound of distant machinery. The station master, a hunched old alien with eyes like polished stone, recognized her instantly. "You," he whispered. You should not be here. The girl's expression didn't change. I go where I choose. As they loaded supplies, a message flashed across the comm screen. A bounty notice, her face in the center. Reward, alive or dead, 1,000 credits. The humans stared at it. That's enough to make the whole galaxy hunt you. The girl's voice was cold. They already are. They left the station before the crew could make any calls, but within hours the first hunters appeared. 3 ships dropped out of warp behind them, smaller and faster than the freighter. Weapons locked, engines roaring. The human took the controls while the girl moved to the turret station without a word. The first volley of fire rocked the freighter. The girl's turrets answered, cutting one hunter ship in half. The second tried to flank them, but the human spun the freighter in a sharp roll, letting her land a direct hit. The third fled into the dark, engines screaming. For a moment, only the sound of the ship's systems remained. The girl came back to the cockpit, her breathing steady. You fight well for a human, she said, almost like it was a challenge. He glanced at her. And you don't fight like someone who needs saving. Her eyes met his, sharp and unreadable. I didn't ask you to save me, she said. You raised your hand, and now you're part of this. He didn't reply, but deep inside, he knew she was right. The choice he made in that auction hall had tied them together, and somewhere, in the dark, a bigger shadow was moving. The bounty had reached ears it was never meant to. The freighter drifted in the shadow of a dying star. Its light was faint, a deep red glow that painted the cockpit in fire-like colors. The human stood at the controls, scanning the empty space ahead. But the girl wasn't in her seat. She was in the storage bay, sitting alone on the cold metal floor, staring at something in her hands. When he walked in, she didn't look up. It was a small pendant, black as glass, etched with glowing silver lines. He had never seen her take it out before. What is it? He asked. Her fingers closed around it slowly. My name, she said, her voice quieter than he had ever heard. She looked up, and for the first time there was no fire in her eyes, only shadows. I am not just some wild thing they caught, she said. I was heir to the Varian throne, until the night my own blood sold me to our enemies. The human listened in silence. I was taken during the war, she continued. Chained, paraded, broken in front of the galaxy. Her voice hardened. They thought if they caged me long enough I'd forget who I was. He understood now why the bounty was so high. If she returned home, she could rally armies and start a war that would burn half the galaxy. You plan to take back your throne, he said. Her lips curled in a faint, dangerous smile. I plan to make them kneel. The moment was cut short by an alarm. The scanner lit up. 4 ships closing fast. These weren't small hunters. They were warships, black and gold, marked with the crest of the Varian Empire. She stood, her golden eyes blazing again. They've come to finish what they started, she said. The human tightened his grip on the controls. Then we don't let them, he replied. The lead warship opened a channel. A cold, regal voice echoed through the ship. Princess, your chains await. The girl stepped forward, her voice like steel. Tell the Emperor, his chains will be mine. The comm went dead. The human glanced at her. This is going to be a fight we might not walk away from. She didn't blink. Then we make it one they never forget. Outside, the warships began to close in. The final battle was about to begin. The black and gold warships moved into formation. Their heavy cannons glowed with deadly light. The freighter was small in their shadow, but the human's hands were steady on the controls. The girl stood beside him, her golden eyes burning brighter than the enemy weapons. They'll try to cripple us first, he said. Aim for the engines, not the guns. She nodded, already moving to the weapons station. The first blast came, a beam of pure energy that tore through the space where they had been seconds earlier. The human rolled the freighter hard, slipping between 2 ships. The girl fired, her shots precise and merciless, tearing through an engine core. One warship exploded, fragments spinning into the void, but the others closed in, surrounding them. The human's console lit up with red warnings, shields failing, systems overheating. Options, he called out. Only one, she said, her voice like ice. We take their flagship. He gave her a sharp look. It's suicide. It's victory, she replied. Before he could argue, she moved to the docking controls, Her fingers flew across the panel, and the freighter shot forward, ramming into the flagship's side, locking them in place with magnetic clamps. The ramp opened, and they stepped into chaos. Armed soldiers filled the corridor, their armor gleaming in the flagship's dim light. The girl didn't hesitate. She moved like lightning, her fists and kicks breaking through the enemy line. The human followed, covering her back with precise shots. Every step forward felt like walking through fire. They reached the command deck. The Emperor stood there, tall, draped in gold, his face carved with R. Bogans. "So," he said slowly, "the wild beast returns." The girl stepped closer, her voice steady. "No," she said, "the heir returns."